Alright, y'all, so we just had some news break yesterday that longtime general manager for the Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, has decided to step down from his position, and this comes as a surprise to many fans across the NBA, as Morey has, for the most part, been known as a winning coach, even if it was restricted to the regular season. But also, he just recently signed a 5-year extension with the Houston Rockets last year, and Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Rockets, just recently stated after their most recent playoff exit that Morey's job is safe and there's nothing to worry about. But with all that being said, I want to give some thoughts and opinions on whether this whole Morey small ball era for the Rockets was a success or was it a failure. I think personally a lot of fans are quick to call it a failure, mostly in part due to the fact that they never won a championship, let alone made it to a championship, because of the Golden State Warriors and the many super teams that they had to face in the conference finals. So I wanted to give a retrospective on what went right and what went wrong, in my opinion, for Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets during this time. And I also want to point out that I just got done watching the most recent episode of the Low Post podcast where Zach Lowe had Rockets insider Tim McMahon on, and they gave a lot of information about the behind the scenes of what is currently happening with the Rockets. I have a lot of that information in here as well to help explain some of the ideas that I talk about. So why was this era of the Rockets not a failure? I think it all starts with the fact that once the Warriors reached the level of power that they did in the NBA, most significantly when they signed Kevin Durant to their roster, a lot of NBA teams decided to take a pause in their rebuilding process and started to look to the future a few years down the line in order to avoid this Warriors super team. But Morey, on the other hand, decided to take them head on as a challenge to take down one of the teams that was being heralded as the best of all time. Because of that, we got countless conference finals matchups involving these two teams, and it was just very unfortunate for Daryl Morey and the Rockets that they were up in one of the series and had multiple chances to either close out or just get some sort of an advantage on the Warriors if it hadn't been for some unlucky circumstances such as some hamstrings maybe being pulled the wrong way or 27 straight threes maybe not going into the hoop but rather clanking off the side of the rim. But like I said, it should be noted that Daryl Morey took this challenge head on. As soon as he got his hands on one of the best players of our current generation in James Harden, he immediately went to work and decided that rather than building around James Harden, he wanted to get this rebuild done quickly. He went on to trade almost every first-round pick that the Rockets had for their foreseeable future and flip those into assets and other superstars that could help James Harden win now. We saw that ever since the Clint Capella pick, like I said, pretty much every pick went into a trade. We saw them try to get Dwight Howard to work with Harden. We saw them try to get CP3 to work with James Harden. And most recently, we've seen the Russell Westbrook experiment not quite work out. And I mean, none of them really worked out. But that part also raises the question of, did Daryl Morey give up on his ideas too quickly? Did he not leave enough time for chemistry to build up? And how did he not let his team basically grow together? And did he move on too quickly? And to that point, I think he did in some cases. But in other cases that are a bit more polarizing, I'll explain them later too, I think that Morey made the right choice for the situation that he was in. The first trade that I want to talk about over the course of the Morey era was the infamous CP3 for Russell Westbrook trade. Nowadays, this trade is being heralded as one of the worst of all time, as they gave up CP3, who we have to remember was just very injury prone for the Rockets, missed a lot of games, missed a lot of important games, and wasn't quite the same player that he once was during his time in Houston. So they ended up getting rid of him and 4 first-round draft picks, 2 of their own, and 2 pick swaps in return for a younger, less injury-prone Russell Westbrook, who was also on a big contract, much like Chris Paul, so there wasn't much of a dispute there. But unfortunately for the Rockets, the injury curse, I should say, seemed to not be involved in the trade and decided to leave Chris Paul and switch on to Westbrook as he also came to Houston. Now, on the Low Post podcast, Tim McMahon made the point that both James Harden and Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta were both big Russell Westbrook backers. They both wanted to get CP3 and his big contract off of their books, and they wanted to bring in, like I said, the younger, less injury-prone Russell Westbrook to be a better complement to James Harden. Daryl Morey, on the other hand, was on the side of CP3, and McMahon even went as far to say that Morey was the biggest CP3 supporter in the entire Rockets organization. So you can understand that it was probably a tough deal for Daryl Morey to make, but when you have both your owner and your superstar player telling you that they want a trade done for the same guy, you're kind of put in a position where you have to make that deal or else you end up losing your job. So it makes sense as to why Morey went through with the trade. And while now that the playoffs are done and we saw the absolute dumpster fire that was Russell Westbrook in the series against the Thunder and the Lakers, I think it must be noted that in the months of January and February, both those months leading up to the suspension of the NBA and play in general, Russell Westbrook was playing some of the best basketball of his career. In the month of January, Westbrook averaged 32, 8, and 8, along with 2 steals per game, while shooting 52% from the field. And then, if we also look to February, he averaged 33, 7, and 6, again with 2 steals per game as well. But this month he averaged 55% from the field and also shot 40% from 3 on the month. And both of these months were, like I said, some of the best statistical months he's had in his entire career. And it was all a part of I think in my mind, due to the fact that he was kind of thrown into this Rockets organization. He was traded in the offseason. He definitely needed some time to acclimate to this strange style of play that Morey had them running. I think it was just a matter of it took Westbrook a few months to get into a rhythm, and once we finally saw him in this rhythm, he was playing like the top 10 player that he knows he can be. I don't think it's a crazy statement to make that had there not been a suspension of play in the NBA, and we saw this Russell Westbrook continue to play into the playoffs, like I said, I don't think it's a crazy statement to make to say that this Rockets team would have definitely made some noise and done some damage in the playoffs. We saw them struggle against a not as talented Thunder team, and then we also saw them struggle against a much more talented Lakers team, and a lot of that was due to the fact that Russell Westbrook was basically playing for the Lakers throughout the entire series. Russ slander aside, though, to end this trade idea on a more positive note, I definitely think that giving Russell Westbrook a full offseason to get healthy and get back into basketball shape and get back to his winning ways, I could definitely see this Rockets team and the few changes they make this offseason become a just as good, if not better team than they were this past season. Yes, they will all get a year older, but it's also another year that they have spent together as a team, and that can only do good things for their chemistry and general ability to play with each other in general. I think it's more of a matter of what this organization is going to be able to do this coming off season in terms of the minor adjustments they're going to have to make in order to build a good contender again, because their window of opportunity with James Harden is slowly closing more and more each year, and it's only going to be a matter of time until James Harden either doesn't have the it factor anymore or might simply ask for a trade or just move on in general. So even though the Rockets have pretty much the least amount of flexibility in terms of roster construction heading into this offseason relative to the rest of the league, there are still some decisions to be made that could heavily influence how they do in this upcoming season. Obviously, the first one is the new general manager who, Rafael Stone is his name. He has been in the organization since 2015, so that alludes to my point earlier about the fact that small ball isn't necessarily dead. It will still be a very relevant system for this Houston Rockets team as they move forward. Stone has already said that he is not planning on changing up the system too much, so there probably won't be any drastic changes in terms of that respect. The next position that needs addressing is the vacant head coach spot that there is currently for the team. On the Low Post podcast, Tim McMahon named and talked about 3 of the potential candidates for this job. The first one being Jeff Van Gundy, who has been linked to this job for countless years at this point. He has been heralded as the next man up, even when D'Antoni was still there and having fine season after fine season. That's because Jeff Van Gundy, has been heralded as a great coach in the league for some time now. Like I said, he's had links to the Rockets. It's just a matter of James Harden and Russell Westbrook basically giving the okay to the higher ups in the organization to let Jeff Van Gundy run the team. The second candidate, John Lucas, has been a player development coach who has worked with a lot of the Rockets roster already, making him a strong candidate through the fact that he just has many good relationships with the players on the team. Because of this, he'd be able to communicate not only with Harden and Westbrook, but all of the role players as well. Like I said, just making him a strong candidate as well. And then the third person that Tim McMahon talked about was Stephen Silas, who has been an assistant under Rick Carlisle in Dallas for a few years now. He's been heralded as a great X's and O's guy. He has apparently been a great offensive mastermind for some time now, so that could easily be very appealing to both Harden and Westbrook as well. No matter which head coach they go with to fill this vacancy, it will definitely just be interesting in general to see where small ball goes from here, because as I've said, it's definitely not dead. We now see many other teams, even in the NBA, running a very similar style, and while the Rockets definitely will not keep the rotation of Jeff Green, PJ Tucker, and Robert Covington as their solution to the 5 spot for 48 minutes, there'll definitely be some lineups where they still use those same 3 guys in a similar role. It's already been reported that the Rockets are currently looking for ways to bring on some cheaper big men who could play a similar role to one that Clint Capella did during his time with Houston, and it's going to be a lob threat, rim protector, and just paint defender type role that we've seen Capella and Dwight Howard run for so long now. And like I said, I think this Rockets team will be back in contention for next year as long as they don't mess up anything too bad in this offseason. And then one last point I wanted to make on why I do believe that this era of basketball was a success for the NBA in general, and not just the Rockets, is that even though there have been other influences, Daryl Morey was definitely at the front of the charge into this new modern idea of what basketball is. Nowadays, we see almost every team have at least one lineup where they run small ball 5 and have almost all their guys on the court able to shoot threes and expand the floor. And a lot of these ideas were started by Daryl Morey himself. And for that reason, even if you don't believe that the Rockets were a successful team, I definitely think that you should give your respect to Morey for branching out and taking the chance at all of this criticism and all of the hate he's gotten just to see if an analytical approach to the game would work. So even if the Rockets do not have a ring to show for it, I think that the progress they made in terms of changing the game of basketball is definitely something to be remembered for a long time. And with that, that will be the end of this video. I just wanted to say thank you for watching. Drop a comment down below with your opinions, as I expect many people to have opinions on this subject matter. And as always, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. And I'll say it again, thank you for watching.